Listen to me. The greatest tragedy in life is not death. It is a life lived comparing itself to others. You were never created to be a copy. You were born original. And yet every day we waste purpose trying to compete with people who don't even know why they exist. The problem is you're so busy watching them that you're missing you. You're studying their Instagram, their titles, their houses, their cars, and all the while, your own destiny is starving from neglect. You're admiring their harvest, but you've never planted your seed. Let me tell you something. God never gave you grace for someone else's race. That's why it drains you to try and keep up with people. You don't need to outdo anyone. You need to outgrow who you were yesterday. Write this down. Focus is the womb of achievement. And whatever you focus on consistently, you feed. If you focus on people, you empower their opinion. But if you focus on purpose, you ignite your potential. You see, a lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. Why? Because the lion understands identity. The lion is not moved by noise. It's moved by vision. And until you lock into your own assignment, the applause and the criticism of others will both become distractions. Like, let me ask you, when was the last time you sat with yourself just to discover what God hid inside you? You were born original, not to be a copy. That's not just a catchy phrase. It's a divine truth rooted in your very creation. When God formed you, He didn't consult a template. He didn't recycle a plan. He reached into eternity and pulled out something the world had never seen before. You, crafted by His own hands, shaped in His image, infused with unique gifts, talents, and a purpose that no one else can fulfill. Genesis 1:26 says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, not after your neighbor's likeness, not in the image of a celebrity, in His image." And when God makes something in His image, He makes it with intention. You are not random. You are not an accident. You are a design, a divine one. So why do we spend so much of our time trying to imitate others? Why do we bury our originality under layers of imitation, hoping it will win us acceptance? The truth is, the moment you trade authenticity for approval, you lose the very thing that makes you powerful. You stop being you, and you start living someone else's story. A story that was never yours to carry. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen two fingerprints that are the same? Even identical twins, born from the same womb at the same time, do not share the same fingerprint. What does that tell you? It tells you that God never repeats Himself. He is too creative for duplication. So if He doesn't repeat fingerprints, why do you think He would repeat purposes? You were created for a specific assignment. That means if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. And yet, many people will live and die as a counterfeit, never discovering the power of their authenticity because they spent their entire lives trying to match someone else's highlight reel. That's not how the kingdom works. In 1 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about the body of Christ and how each part has its own function. He says, the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you, and the head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. In other words, you matter. Your uniqueness matters. Your part is essential. When you try to become someone else, the body is left crippled because your function goes missing. Have you noticed how a seed doesn't look like the tree it's meant to become? But everything the tree needs is already inside the seed. Your potential is in you, but it must be cultivated. And cultivation doesn't happen through imitation. You can admire someone else's tree, but you still have to plant your own seed. I wonder how many of us are praying for God to bless our lives while living someone else's blueprint. How can God bless who you're pretending to be? He only anoints the real you. And the longer you wear a mask, the longer you delay your own breakthrough. This is why focus is so critical. Because the more you focus on others, the more you dilute your own identity. And diluted identity leads to disobedience. Not because you're trying to rebel, but because you're walking a path that was never assigned to you in the first place. The key to your impact is not found in imitation, it's found in revelation, when you begin to understand who you are and what God placed inside you. And until you embrace your originality, you will continue to live frustrated, exhausted, and unfulfilled, trying to measure up to someone else's grace. So today, the call is simple. Stop chasing shadows. Stop mirroring mirrors. Discover the original within, because the world needs what God put in you. Comparison kills purpose. It sounds simple, but it's one of the most dangerous traps of our time. It's subtle, silent, and socially acceptable, yet it robs people of destiny every single day. You were never meant to measure your worth by someone else's progress. But from the moment we open our eyes, we're bombarded with images, updates, and achievements from everyone else's life. And we begin to weigh ourselves on a scale that was never built for us. You'll never fulfill your assignment looking at someone else's lane. And the more you compare, the more you doubt what God has already given you. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells the parable of the talents. One servant received 5, another 2, and another 1, each according to his ability, not according to his neighbor's ability, not according to social trends. God distributes purpose based on assignment, not appearances. And here's the key. The master never asked the servant with 2 talents why he didn't produce 5. He only asked if he was faithful with what he was given. Have you ever noticed how jealousy creeps in when we don't understand our own value? You see someone excelling in their gift, and instead of being inspired, you start feeling inadequate. But the truth is, what you admire in them is simply the result of them focusing on their own gift, not yours. And the enemy knows if he can get you to compare, he can get you to pause. Because purpose cannot grow in the soil of envy. Let me ask you, have you ever tried to water your own garden while staring at your neighbor's lawn? What happens? You miss your own weeds. You overlook your own roots. You get so distracted by their fruit that you forget your own tree is dying. That's what comparison does. It keeps your eyes off your assignment and puts them on someone else's outcome. In 1 Samuel 18, after David killed Goliath, the people sang, "Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands." And from that moment, Saul the king grew jealous. This man who was once chosen and anointed by God became obsessed with someone else's praise. He lost his peace, his direction, and ultimately his throne. All because he compared. Saul didn't lose his position because of David's greatness. He lost it because he stopped focusing on his own. Comparison will make you compete with people who aren't even in your category. You'll start racing against someone who isn't even running your race. And when that happens, you will either slow down out of fear or speed up out of pride. Both will take you off course. But when you focus on your own lane, something shifts. Purpose becomes clear, progress becomes personal, and peace becomes possible. The kingdom of God is not a competition, it's a calling. You are not in a race against your brother or sister. You are in a race against time, against the expiration of your assignment. And every second you spend wishing you had someone else's life, you delay the impact of your own. There is no reward in heaven for best imitation. Heaven does not celebrate copies. Heaven honors obedience. And obedience begins when you stop comparing and start cultivating what God gave you. So I challenge you. What have you allowed comparison to silence in your life? What dream, what gift, what calling have you buried because it didn't look like someone else's success? A focus is the womb of achievement. Nothing grows in your life until you learn to focus. You can have potential, passion, and even divine purpose, but without focus, all of it remains unrealized. Focus is what transforms intention into manifestation. It is the bridge between revelation and accomplishment. And in a world full of noise, distraction is not just common, it's normalized. But the more distracted you are, the more delayed your destiny becomes. Jesus understood the power of focus. In Luke 9:51, the Bible says he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. He wasn't swayed by crowds, critics, or convenience. He knew his mission and he locked in. That's what focus does. It silences the outside world so you can hear what heaven is saying. Until you set your face like flint, you will always be pulled by every opinion, opportunity, or obstacle. Let me ask you, how much of your potential has been lost to distraction? How many ideas have you started but never finished because you kept shifting your gaze? One day you're inspired, the next day you're comparing, the third day you're doubting, and by the fourth you're quitting. Not because you weren't capable, but because you weren't focused. Imagine a magnifying glass under the sun. On its own, sunlight is powerful. But when it's focused through a lens, it can set a fire. Your life works the same way. You are born with light, with divine energy. But until you channel it into one direction, it won't burn, it won't break through, it won't impact. James 1:8 says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Double-minded means unfocused. It means trying to do too many things, please too many people, chase too many goals without being anchored in your God-given assignment. And instability is not just about falling, it's about failing to stand firm. Focus brings stability. It gives you clarity, direction, and power. You can't say yes to everything and expect to fulfill your calling. Focus requires saying no, even to good things, even to opportunities that look promising but aren't part of your purpose. Not everything that is available is aligned. Some doors are distractions dressed as blessings, and it takes focus to discern the difference. Think of Nehemiah. He was building the wall, and his enemies kept trying to pull him down from the work. But he said, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. That's focus. He didn't get caught up in arguments. He didn't attend every invitation. He stayed on the wall. That's where you must live, on the wall of your purpose, with eyes fixed, hands steady, and heart resolved. And here's the truth. What you focus on consistently, you magnify. If you focus on fear, it grows. If you focus on faith, it grows. If you focus on failure, your confidence shrinks. If you focus on your calling, your courage builds. So the question is, what have you been feeding with your attention? Some of you are frustrated, not because God hasn't spoken, but because you've been too scattered to hear, too busy scrolling, too distracted by the noise of others. And until you cut through that noise, you will always live under your capacity. Because focus is what takes potential and births it into purpose. So I urge you, find your wall, find your Jerusalem. And once you do, don't come down for anything. God gives grace for your race, not someone else's. That simple truth could free you from years of anxiety, insecurity, and wasted effort. You were not designed to carry another person's burden, nor were you anointed to run in another person's lane. Grace is divine empowerment. It is the supernatural ability to do what God has assigned you to do. And when you step outside of your assignment, you step outside of that grace. In 2 Timothy 1:9, it says that God saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace. Notice the connection. Purpose and grace. Wherever there is divine purpose, there is divine grace to fulfill it. But that grace only works inside your calling. Not your cousins, not your mentors, yours. Many people are exhausted, not because they're doing too much, but because they're doing what they were never graced to do. It's like trying to run a marathon in someone else's shoes. They don't fit, and every step becomes painful. You admire their style, their results, their pace, but what you don't see is the grace that empowers them behind the scenes. And when you try to copy their strategy without their assignment, all you end up with is burnout. Let me ask you something. How much of your current frustration is the result of comparison-driven decisions? How many things are you doing right now simply because someone else is doing it? Because culture says you should, because it looks successful on someone else's timeline. In 1 Samuel 17, when David stepped up to fight Goliath, Saul tried to give him his armor. It was the king's armor, shiny, heavy, impressive. But David couldn't walk in it. It wasn't made for him. So he took it off and picked up what he was graced to use, a sling and 5 stones. That sling may not have looked powerful to anyone else, but it was effective in David's hands because he stayed in his grace. You have a sling too. Something God has uniquely given you. But if you keep trying to wear Saul's armor, you'll never discover how powerful your own weapons are. You'll live performing, pretending, and constantly second-guessing your every move. Romans 12:6 says we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. Grace is not generic, it's specific, it's tailored, it's personalized for the race God set before you. And when you operate in it, there's a rhythm, a peace, a flow. Things don't become easy, but they become possible. You find strength you didn't know you had, wisdom that didn't come from books, courage that rises even in fear. That's grace. But the moment you start running someone else's race, that flow dries up. You start striving instead of thriving. You lose your joy. You become burdened by things that were never yours to carry. That's why Hebrews 12:1 says to run with endurance the race marked out for us. Your race, not theirs. And that means you don't need to compare your pace with anyone else. Some people will sprint, others will crawl. But as long as you stay in your lane, the grace will carry you. God never called you to impress. He called you to obey. And obedience always attracts grace. You don't need their spotlight. You need your assignment. Because the favor you're looking for is attached to the purpose God designed for you alone. Vision eliminates distraction. Without vision, your life becomes a reaction. You wake up each day responding to circumstances instead of directing them. You move based on pressure, not purpose. But when you have vision, clear, God-given vision, something shifts. You begin to filter your choices through a higher calling. You no longer ask, is this good? You ask, is this aligned with where I'm going? Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Some translations say, cast off restraint. That means when you lack vision, you lose discipline, you lose boundaries. You start saying yes to things that are beneath your calling. Why? Because you don't see where you're headed. But when vision is alive in you, you can say no without apology. You can walk away from distractions, not out of pride, but because your destination demands it. Think of vision like a compass. You may not have every detail, but you know your direction. And once direction is established, distraction becomes easier to identify. Every delay, every temptation, every detour is weighed against that internal compass. You don't chase every opportunity because not every opportunity is God's assignment. Just because it's available doesn't mean it's aligned. Let me ask you, what distractions have been stealing your time? What conversations, habits, or relationships are pulling you away from purpose? You cannot afford to be casual with your calling. You don't have time to entertain things that don't carry eternal weight. Vision gives you the clarity to discern what's essential and what's noise. Jesus lived with relentless vision. In John 9:4, he said, I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. That's urgency. That's clarity. That's vision. He didn't let the applause of people or the attacks of critics pull him off mission. He knew his why. Do you? Distraction doesn't always show up as sin. Sometimes it looks like success in the wrong area. You're productive but not purposeful. Busy but not becoming. It's possible to climb a ladder your whole life and realize at the top that it was leaning against the wrong wall. That's what life without vision produces. Movement without meaning. In the story of Nehemiah, while rebuilding the wall, his enemies tried to lure him into meaningless meetings. But he said, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. That's what vision sounds like. It gives you a divine no. A focused life doesn't chase applause. It obeys assignment. And let's be honest, one of the biggest distractions today is comparison. Looking at what others are doing, how fast they're moving, what they've achieved. But vision will silence that noise. When you're fixed on where you're going, you don't have time to envy someone else's path. You understand that what God has placed in you requires all of you. Your attention, your discipline, your devotion. So many people are asking for clarity, but God is waiting for focus. You're praying for direction, but your eyes are on everything except Him. Until you lock in on what He showed you, you remain double-minded, starting and stopping, hoping and doubting. But when vision takes root, everything else begins to fall in place. Your pace becomes intentional, your decisions become sharper, your no becomes sacred. Distraction is a luxury purpose can't afford. So as you journey forward, remember this, You were born original. Don't die a copy. Stop comparing, because comparison only clouds your calling. Focus like your future depends on it, because it does. Stay in your lane where grace flows freely for your race. And above all, keep your vision clear, because vision is what separates the distracted from the destined. Your life is not an accident. You are intentional. You are equipped. You are chosen. Don't waste another day looking sideways. Look upward, look inward, and then move forward with boldness. Thank you for giving your time, your heart, and your ears. May God bless you with clarity, courage, and conviction as you step fully into the life He designed just for you. Stay focused, stay faithful, and never forget, the world needs you. Good luck on your journey. Thank you, and God bless you.